Man, Nils, your camera is like so dope. It's like you're in a movie. You're an actor now? You're a movie star?
If acting weird counts as being an actor, then yes, absolutely.
I'll say it counts just because you have the camera.
It kind of looks like, whenever you're doing an interview tour and you're in the studio and you've got the logo of the movie behind you, and you're being asked questions by all the different reporters all day. It kind of looks like that.
Yeah, I need one of those. They have these banner walls. They had one at NFT XLV where a lot of people took photos, and it's just like logos in like diamond shape across all the sponsors and stuff. So need one of those here for Mike particularly. He needs like intersect and an IOG and a Mergo and everything like for his background. The spokesperson here.
Yes, yeah, I should probably do that eventually.
I think the bar is fine.
I had a lot of comments about the bar.
It's a bar? Okay, I have never actually looked closer. So I actually, for me, it looked like one of those hanging things for like garage tools. Like,
well,
that's a tool set. But now that I look closer, now that you said it's a bar,
I should probably show it to you eventually. There's a television behind it. Like we made it for sports night, right? Because we're hockey fans here, and it's pretty nice.
Nice.
Hey, if you guys come to Canada, we could probably do something. That'd be nice. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my stream or my screen.
It is visible. It is very small.
Yeah, I'll just go through all of them. I've done this a couple of times. It usually takes an hour around if I'm good enough. So if you guys are ready, we could get started. Right. So as you may already know, just make sure, Mr. Johnny, to tell me if something's wrong about what I say. Could be. These are all the protocol parameters for governance only, because there's much more than that. But these only talks about the governance part of the protocol parameters. So the governance group, one of the 4 groups of protocol parameter, which is the governance, technical, networking, and economic. So here, the first one talks about the DReps threshold. So are you guys familiar with that? Oh yeah, some of y'all muted your... That's interactive, by the way, guys. You could go ahead and just talk and cut me if you want to.
I could use some going through it myself.
What's that?
Yeah, I was about to say my time spent reading the thing.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I'll just do this like that. There you go. So yeah, the example that I made on this infographic, they're basically made to make sure that people understand. So I usually do it very extreme, right? So in this example, it is extreme because you gotta, on this example, you have a total available ADA supply of 35 billion. That's the available supply, not the total supply, right? And the calculation of the active voting stakes for SPOs are only calculated amongst the active, not the SPO, did I say SPO? DReps. The amount of voting power that enters into the calculation for DReps are only the ones from active DReps, registered and active DReps. So in this example, if you only have 5 person or 5 DReps, including the no confidence that's here, the 2 little gears, that has each one of them 10k ADA, then all those 5 guys represent 100% of the active voting stake, even if there's only 5. Even if they would hold 1 ADA each, for example. And even if you got 35 billion total, right? If these guys are the only one that are registered, 100% of the calculation only englobes those guys. So what you got in there? You have DReps, you have no confidence, and you can also have, scripts, right? As long as it's an active DRep. And on the abstain side, you have of course, the abstain vote doesn't count towards the active voting stakes. You have the inactive DRep who passed their expiry if they don't vote on anything for a certain amount of time, which is the another protocol parameter that we'll talk about a little later, which is the dRepActivity protocol parameter. And you also have the automated abstain DRep, the predefined DRep, which is a DRep that you can delegate to that will be abstain on everything. Is that okay with you guys so far?
I've got a question on the
Yeah.
abstain vote. So,
Yep.
Why is the abstain not? I know you have the inactivity down below and explain that, but why is the abstain vote not considered active, right? Because it does seem like an active. I'm actively saying I'm participating in governance, but I don't have an opinion on this. That I'm confident enough to say yes or no on. Wouldn't I consider that be active as well?
Well, it's an active vote, but you yourself decide to get out of the calculation, because the best way to explain that as a vote would be that you don't want to get involved in the question, you don't want to get involved into the governance action, but you don't care about the outcome. Could be no, could be yes, it could pass or not. You don't care about the outcome, but you don't want to participate actively to it, even if it's an active vote. Because if you abstain from voting, for example, you're active and you don't do nothing, you will be calculated as a no vote, even if you don't do anything. That's explained just a little lower. I could actually go there if you guys don't have any more questions about what is considered as active and what is not considered as active.
I think on this thing, it makes sense. What you said just now makes sense because of I think for me, a lack of understanding was that on votes, as far as I understand, there is only yes or no. There isn't, like, the outcome of the vote is never, okay, here's yes, no, abstain as an outcome, but it's either
Yes.
we do it or we don't, and like it's a binary decision. So that makes sense.
There is something that I will, just to make sure, there's something that I will repeat very often, and it's the most confusing part. I'll say it again and again. Abstain from voting is not the same thing as voting abstain. So I'll see it as voting no. You have the voting actively no and passively being a no. This is a weird concept. Actually, if you don't do if you don't do nothing, but are still active, I'll get to you, Johnny, very soon.
Okay.
If you don't mind. If you don't do nothing but your DRep is active, the system will see you as a no vote, as a passive no vote. So you won't be visible in the governance state, but you will still be in the calculation as a no vote. But if you vote abstain, of course, you just get out of the calculation. Go ahead, Johnny.
See that abstain vote in your diagram?
Yes, it's coming. I was getting there.
No. Above the one you've already shown us at the top there.
Yep.
That abstain vote, right? That had the option of voting yes, no, or abstain, and it actively voted abstain. So if it had voted yes or no, then it would have been 16.6% as 6 people, as opposed to 20% as 5, if it had chosen yes or no. But once it chose abstain, the 16.6% disappeared, and it went into creating the 20% of each of the individuals that were left voting either yes or no actively. And I don't know if that's a good thing to reflect in the diagram. That it would have been 16.6 and 6 as opposed to 20% and 5. It's difficult to represent. It's probably in a future.
No, it is explained right there. I do it right here. I'll get there. I'll get there very soon, and you will see why I made it this way. I chose equal amounts for each one of them so it would be easier for you guys to understand. Let me get there. Okay. When you're inactive as a DRep or when you vote abstain, like in this example here, when a DRep vote abstain or become inactive, they indirectly increase the influence of other active DReps. On the other hand, when they abstain from voting, which is not the same thing, when they abstain from voting, the ledger evaluates the lack of vote of this DRep in the same way as if he had voted no. So this guy here, he's in the no side, but he didn't vote. So it's a passive no. He didn't vote yet, but he decides to vote abstain. So as you see here, you got 70% of threshold. There's 3 yes, so it's 60%. It doesn't pass. And there's 2 no, which represent the no confidence automated DRep and the guy who didn't vote yet. But he decides to go abstain. So what happened? Here, you see that his influence in terms of percentage is redistributed amongst the yes vote and the no vote. Not just the yes votes. So this guy goes abstain. He's not anymore in the calculation. So you got 4 DReps left that are seen by the system. So each one represents 25%. So as you see now, the yes votes reach 75% and they cross the threshold because this guy voted abstain. So here is my question. What's the point of going abstain if he could have just voted yes? What is the difference in this case between going abstain and just simply vote yes? Can you tell me?
The percentage is different, right? It'll be 80% versus 75 in that case.
Exactly. You got it. Good job. If this guy would have voted yes, his entire stake would have gone into the yes side, so you would get 80%, not 75. So the lesson into that is that when you go abstain, you don't only help the yes vote, but you help the yes and the no votes. So your influence is redistributed amongst all active DReps, the yes and the no. It could be any percentage actually. If your influence is like 1.50%, for example, that 1.50% is going to be redistributed into everyone in terms of percentage, right? Because your stake is still your stake. So that's why I've put the percentage as well, if you guys want to calculate it this way. Any questions? All right. Don't be scared, guys. All right. Just making sure there's no stupid question. Like, I don't mind at all. I'll answer everything. So if it's okay, I'll just get to the next one. Okay, I don't think there's any questions. All right. There you go. DRep voting thresholds. What DReps can vote on? They can vote on everything. Everything. In my opinion, the entire power of this governance system comes to the DReps. The DReps control everything. They have full power on almost everything, which is right for me because they can vote on everything. And that's not the case for the 3 entities that we have, the 3 governance bodies, which is the Constitutional Committee, the SPOs, and the DReps. So what do you have here? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got 10 thresholds that they have, right? But only one specific action has 2 different thresholds. So
I could play this song if you want to hear it. I mean,
Yes, it was so. You could look.
What's that? Oh, that's background noise. Okay. So yeah, you got update constitution, update to constitution, governance action, the hard fork initiation, governance action. They're all governance action, except here, those 2 thresholds are only for one governance action, which is the update committee. Because the Constitutional Committee has two different states, the normal state and the no confidence state. What are they? So the normal state would be like what we expect to be the normal state. Everything's going perfectly, everything's doing fine. You want to elect or remove a Constitutional Committee member or many Constitutional Committee members, and the state of the governance system is on normal state, then you have a threshold for that. This will be the protocol parameter, the threshold protocol parameter for that. If you vote as a DRep, that's going to be the one to cross. But if for any reason the community is unsatisfied of the Constitutional Committee and manage to ratify a motion of no confidence governance action, then the whole system will be in a no confidence state. So what is a no confidence state? That basically means that you rejected the Constitutional Committee and the system won't let you. It will delay the ratification of every coming governance action. So you won't be able to ratify anything else than an update committee. So you have to replace them before being able to do anything else on the governance system. So that would be the threshold for that. So the update committee governance action would require you guys as a DRep to cross the committee no confidence threshold in this case. So both are linked to the same governance action. Any questions? Am I explaining it this well? Really? There's no question?
You're getting really good at it, Mike. You're getting really good at it.
Okay. Just make sure you got me through, right? I mean, you have a question, just go ahead and ask it right away. Don't hesitate. All right. The protocol parameters, right? That's a very interesting topic. You got a whole bunch of parameters, right? And they're all separated in 4 groups, which I mentioned earlier. The economic group, the governance group, the networking group, and the technical group. The governance group is this whole graphic. All the total numbers, the totality of those parameters are mentioned in this infographic. And there's going to be an infographic. Uh-oh, I lost somebody. There's going to be an infographic for each one of these. That's what I'm working on right now, but it's coming eventually. So yeah. And each one of these has their own sets of parameters that you can change. And in a protocol parameter change governance action, you can change any of these. You can stick them all in the same governance action. You could change the K parameter, the monetary expansion, and some random threshold somewhere. If you include them in the same governance action, it is going to work. But you have a threshold for each one of these. So if, for example, the threshold of networking group is higher than the economic group one, but in the same governance action, you wanted to change a parameter of the economic group and the networking group, then the threshold that the DRep will have to cross would be the highest one of these two to be able to ratify this governance action. That's a little tricky, right? But that's the rule. That's the way it's made. The no confidence, do I need to mention it, right? If you don't like the entirety of the Constitutional Committee, you can submit a no confidence. And if it passes, the entirety of the committee is going to be thrown away. But if there's only a single person that you don't like, I would suggest you to just use an update committee governance action to try to just remove that person in particular. And this can be done in a normal state. You don't have to stall the entire governance, right? Unless you see them as bad actors. So this would be the difference. Any questions so far? All right. Okay, I'll get to the next one. The SPOs. Just like this. Okay, the SPOs. For each governance bodies, the voting mechanisms are the same. The way you vote, I mean. A yes vote is a yes vote, a no vote is a no vote, a passive no vote, like not voting at all, but not voting at all, has the same weight as a no vote. Same thing. If you vote abstain, you get yourself out of the active voting state for SPOs. This is the same thing. But as an SPO, you do not have an auto abstain. You cannot delegate to something as an SPO because you are yourself the governance body representing the SPO. So
if you abstain, if you vote to abstain, then your percentage gets distributed to the rest of them.
yes, exactly. Exactly. So what represent the 100%? So in this example, I took a snapshot. It's a snapshot from March 18, 2024. That's probably not the same numbers today, but that's a snapshot so you could see, guys, that there's 61 point on this date there was 61.9% ADA stake to stake pools and 38.1% ADA from the available supply, again, that was staked to retired stake pools and unstaked. For example, your money is on an exchange, it's not staked, that would be in this section there. And 100% of the SPO's active voting stakes represent only the ADA that is staked to the totality of the stake pools. So your voting power is the amount, as an SPO, your voting power is the amount of stake you have staked to your stake pool. That doesn't include retired stake pool. So if you have sticky stake to a retired stake pool, it doesn't get into that calculation. It is marked as not participating in governance.
I've got a question, and I know you may be able to answer this since you're a stake pool operator as well. So with the SPOs, there is no concept of inactive really in regards to stake. However, we know that because stake pool operators have to rotate their KES keys, their stake pools they're not dormant, but they don't make any blocks anymore. But it feels still that a lot of that may not, because there is no inactivity, that it may be a much higher threshold overall to meet for stake pools to participate in governance when it's not just stake pools that are active. Because if all I do is pay somebody, to rotate my KES keys and that's it, my stake pool operates, makes blocks, my delegation stays, essentially, that means a lot of those stake pools may just by default vote no because they're not participating, right?
That's correct. But if you pay somebody to rotate your KES key, we have Johnny here, for example, you could also pay that person to auto vote abstain for you, because that person, that orchestrator, could build your transaction to vote abstain on everything. And you would only have to sign it the same way you sign for your KES key rotation. You use your cold key, you sign the transaction that your orchestrator built for you.
Would be interesting to see. You have the numbers here, right, for like stake to stake pools and unstaked and stake to retired stake pools. I'd be interested how much ADA is staked, and that's part of the exercise, I guess. How much ADA is staked to stake pools that are not making blocks?
There's a difference, and I'm actually glad you mentioned it. If you don't make blocks because you didn't rotate your KES key, you will still be seen as active by the system. But if you are retired, you are not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that there might be like a bunch of stake that lives with stake pools that won't participate in governance, and we don't know what that number is unless we get that data, right?
Yeah.
There could be another like 5 billion delegated to pools that no longer do anything, but the people that are staking also don't know or have no awareness of this, and so we may just like have
That is
you know,
correct. And you
like a
also,
fixed percentage of no votes that we always have to kind of include in
Yep.
kind of the thresholds we set up.
yes, I do have the same opinion. And also you have to consider the SPOs who doesn't feel comfortable about using their cold keys for anything, including voting on governance. And we have SPOs who doesn't feel comfortable at all about doing that. For example, in the SIP 94, that I'm not going to talk too much about, we had SPOs who didn't vote at all or didn't do anything because they didn't feel comfortable about using their cold keys, even for witnessing a transaction. But I'm just going to leave that there. It's not for me to decide what those thresholds are going to be. It's up to you guys when we're going to be on Chang after Chang out fork. We made our recommendations with Johnny as well as the governance protocol parameter committee, and it's going to be up to the community to change it if they don't like it, because it's updatable. Yeah, and we also have, real quick, to consider that if I retire my pool on epoch N, my stake is going to be considered inactive 2 epochs later. That has to be considered too.
I have a question, and I don't know if the answer is already kind of defined, but could the protocol get itself into trouble by so the threshold for how much needs to be voting yes on a proposal? I know the SPOs don't participate in all proposals anyway, and I don't off the top of my head know which ones they do. But is the threshold that changes how many SPOs need to vote yes on a proposal, is that threshold voted on by the SPOs?
No.
And or the SPOs alone? Okay, because that would be a very tricky slope to go down.
Yes, you're correct. You're also correct. You're very smart, my friend. I'm gonna get there. That's the next slide, actually. So just hold on, and we're gonna get there. Yeah, I think I covered everything about this one. So abstention, I talked about it, and in this example, we have an exchange. I used an exchange for that because they would be, I think it would be advantageous for them to go abstain for regulatory purposes. So to make sure to show that, for example, the SEC, the US regulators, that they do not participate into governance, because that could be seen as, that could be seen as something bad, I think, because you would have influence over the fees, the gas fees, and, right, money incentives and stuff. So in this example, on both sides, you have a threshold of 51%. And you see here, you have an exchange that has 6% of the total available supply. And there's actually one who has that. So I'm not going to name an entity, not going to name it. So we have 61.9%, and this entity, this organization, decides to vote abstain on everything. Because you do have to actively vote abstain on each one of the governance actions you want to be seen as abstain. So you will need a script for that. I'm actually working on this as well. So if they want to use it, they could use it. But anyway, that's another topic. So yeah, in this example, they go abstain. So as you see here, their influence is transferred on the abstain side, but the threshold doesn't change. But what it does is that it makes every governance action easier to pass for everyone. So that's the example here. You see the threshold is 51%, and it's getting kind of easier to cross it for everyone else because they don't get involved. Any questions? All right. So let's get to the thresholds of the SPOs. So this here shows that everything they can vote on as SPO. And as you may see, there is no treasury withdrawals. So the SPOs cannot vote on treasury withdrawals. And now for those who know it, most of the time, you will never have a single entity that can ratify a governance action by itself. You always need at least 2, and sometimes 3. What would be the governance action that you would need 3 of those governance bodies to cross their threshold? Somebody have the answer? No? Nobody wants to try something? Okay. So I would say the hard fork initiation would be one of them. To be able to hard fork the chain, for example, if the SPOs altogether make an update. Oh, okay. There. Oh, Space Lady's there. Just hold on. Okay. All right. Hey, ma'am. So it's important. It's a very important one, right? Because as an SPO, I can download the update, but that doesn't mean that I should vote yes on this one. So when do you vote yes on an hard fork initiation? You would vote yes when you feel that the chain is ready, not yourself. So I mentioned it here, the SPO voting threshold value that must be reached to approve the initiation of a hard fork. It is very important to note that when an SPO votes in favor of a hard fork initiation, they are confident that enough SPOs have updated their node to a commonly approved updated version that the initiation of this hard fork will be and that the initiation of this hard fork would be done in due form. So you vote yes on this governance action as an SPO when you think that the chain is ready. Obviously, if you don't make the update and you disagree with it, you will not vote yes to initiate the hard fork, right? So as an SPO, I would vote yes on that governance action when I see that, for example, 80% of the SPO made the upgrade. If not, I don't feel comfortable about doing the hard fork, so I don't vote yes. I will just keep my passive my passive no. And if I see that this governance action is about to reach expiration, then I would probably just actively vote no and add a rationale to that. I do not consider the chain to be ready for a hard fork because not enough SPO made the upgrade, even if I made it myself. So that's important to understand. Okay. So do you have any questions so far?
No, I get it. So when enough of the SPOs still haven't upgraded, I could go put pressure on them and tell them, hey, upgrade your shit so I could vote yes already.
Yeah. And no, I'm not going to get into that, but no, I'm not. I should not. So you guys decide what the right threshold is, right? Yeah, I think Johnny knows where I was going to, but I don't want to start a debate. So you guys determine what that threshold should be as the reps, right?
69%.
Yeah. So, all right, what else can they vote on? They can vote on the update committee. So if you want to add another person, so if I want to add Big Joe to the constitutional committee, who can vote on that? Right? The SPOs can vote on that. The DReps can vote on that, but not the constitutional committee. The constitutional committee cannot vote on update committee governance action, and obviously they cannot vote on motion of no confidence, because that would be stupid. I want to vote myself out. It is constitutional, right? So what else would you need 3 governance body to ratify governance action? The second one would be the protocol parameter security group. And this is a specific group that has been made for SPOs. So we added a third layer of security on those specific protocol parameters. So since there is 4 groups here, some parameters of 3 of those 4 groups, some parameters, not them all, some parameters can be also voted, or actually would require also the SPOs to cross their threshold for those particular governance action, which includes the, for example, the governance action deposit. So the SPOs can vote on some protocol parameters from those 3 groups.
So there's there's 5. Is it 5 total groups? But then some parameters are in multiple groups because the security group is kind of a, like a cross section of some of the others. I would assume the governance group doesn't have any that overlap, but the others do.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
I was like, hey, why is there no network group? I would expect like block size or something where the desired number of pools where the SPOs have some say, but that makes sense. So essentially we have 5 groups, but then some parameters are in more than one from that perspective.
Actually, I do have the time. I will show it to you right here. I'm so used to doing that, I just know exactly where to go. So these are the 4 groups. Networking groups, all the protocol parameter. Same for economy group, technical group, and that's the governance group. But the SPOs, PP security group, takes not them all, but some parameters from 3 of those 4 groups. And they are mentioned, actually, no, that's right under ratification board. Where is it? There it is. For example, there's max BB size, max transaction size. So on these particular parameter, you will need 3 governance bodies threshold to be crossed, not just the constitutional committee and the DReps. For every other protocol parameter, you would only need the DReps and the constitutional committee votes for it to pass. But on these particular ones, you will need 3 governance bodies. So that includes also the governance action deposit, like I mentioned, the minimum fee B, the minimum fee constant, and the minimum fee linear. I'm not going to explain those because they are not governance protocol parameter. They are from other groups that I'm working on infographics as well. So it's coming.
But I think it's good to know so far. It's very interesting, and you showed this in the diagram as well, but it's not as obvious. If you scroll up, you can see those 3 lines going out of the security group. And it's interesting that the SPOs cannot vote on any of the parameter K or N-opt or A0, which is directly impacting their economic results. So that'll be very interesting.
Yeah,
makes sense.
That's a DRep decision, because if as an SPO I had to say about my own protocol parameter, my own, I would say money and census side, I would vote on things that are according to my, I would vote for stuff that's good for myself, right? If I have a high pledge, I would, of course, make sure to vote on things that raise the pledge influence, for example, right? I wouldn't care about necessarily the other pools. So is there a conflict of interest in that matter? That's up to you guys to decide. And anyway, as an SPO, you can be a DRep as well, even if you could just go private. And I'm not gonna get too much into that. Anyone can be a DRep. So if you want to influence it, it's up to you, but you can only influence it with your own personal stake, not the stake delegated to your stake pool. You cannot just redirect that to a DRep. That's not the way it works. Yeah, so the reason why I made it almost invisible is because it's a different slide, right? So if I present this, for example, in a convention or anything, and I'm at this slide, then it's going to be not super easy to see, right? It fits in the slides, but if I show the old map, then you can, of course, use it. So that's why I did it this way. Any questions? You guys are so silent. What's going on? Okay. I'll get to the next one.
Usually Johnny's singing.
What's that? You're singing? All right. So the constitutional committee threshold. This one's very easy, actually. They all hold the same power. Whatever the number, that could be seen as one guy, one vote. But even there, it wouldn't make any sense because a single entity can be a multi-sig. Or actually, I wouldn't even say that because they will be multi-sig. Right? So I could be a constitutional committee member and my organization, my entire organization represents one CC member with many, they all have their own credentials and we multi-sig our votes, right? So I could have, in my organization, I could have an orchestrator that's going to build the transaction and each one of us decides to vote on it. And we have our own sets of rules for one entity. So we could ourselves as an entity, as one CC member, we could have our own threshold for ourselves if we wanted to, right? That's a part of the native script. If we use a native script or whatever, right? I could use a smart contract as well. Yeah, so I'm not just going to get into that too much because I think I digged maybe a little too deep in there, but they all hold the same power amongst each other. So in this example, you got like 2 abstain. They don't get considered because that's the way the voting system works. And you got different other CC members who voted no, passively or actively. You see, this guy abstained from voting. He didn't vote, but he's seen as a no. And you got 4 yeses on whatever random governance action. So no questions so far. That's something everyone understands. You do not have a maximum committee size. So if you wanted to, you could have 100 committee members. Please don't do that, but it is possible. Because to elect constitutional committee members, you do that through a governance action that is called update committee. And on that governance action, you do specify the term length that I'm going to talk to very soon. And you specify the numbers of cold key hash of each one of the constitutional committee that you want to add to the constitutional committee. There is no maximum, but there is a minimum. Why would we need a minimum size? Somebody wants to try it? Why would we need a minimum size? And the answer is very obvious, honestly. Would you like to have a single CC member? I don't think so, right?
No.
Because that would be something that we've seen on SanchoNet. You don't want that, right?
Dun, dun, dun.
You don't want a single entity to control everything. Well, they don't technically control everything, but they do have a say on so many things. They could by themselves stall. They could stall the governance. They could make it like very bad. So you don't want a dictator, right? And you don't want too few constitutional committee members also to control the chain. So that is why we need that specific protocol parameter. So in this example here, we have 8 total members and the committee minimum size is set to 7. So the minimum committee size that the protocol allows in this example is 7 members, and it is an updatable protocol parameter. You can change that number if you wanted to. As a DRep and as a constitutional committee member, that can be updated. So in this example, we have the committee min size value is 7. So here you have 8 members, and they all vote yes, no, and abstain. And for any reason, which would be resignation, their term limit has been passed, or somebody to come out with a governance action, either it's with an update committee governance action, you can also remove a single or more than one committee member from the constitutional committee.
Is that why the little guy's beating the other guy up?
Yeah, that's an intern conflict there. So in the example, we go down from 8 to 6, right? So this guy kicks the other guy in the face, and this one got, shot in the stomach. And we go down to 6. So what happens when the number of CC member goes under the committee minimum size parameter value, then the system falls into a state that is not a no-confidence state, but it falls into a state that makes the CC member act like if they would vote no on everything. So it does stall the governance mechanism. So the only way to be able to get back to a normal situation, you would need to do an update committee governance action to add more constitutional committee members to make sure to reach that number back. So we're down to 6, and the only way to restore the situation would be to add more constitutional committee members because there are too few at this moment. And we did that on SanchoNet, and we actually stalled governance by accident, but it's going to be fixed very soon, hopefully, because we'll respawn the chain. We raised that number to 7, but we had no constitutional committee members, which is sad. So the only way to install the governance in that situation was to elect 7 members, right? But even if we would use an update committee governance action to do that, the update committee requires the DRep votes to be crossed, the DRep thresholds, and also the SPO thresholds to be crossed. And on SanchoNet, we do have like around 30 to 32 SPOs, and they all hold the same amount of stake. So we would need at least 16 of these guys to vote yes on our governance action, which is never going to happen because I've never seen that on SanchoNet. The maximum number of SPOs vote that I've seen on SanchoNet was like 3. So we kind of stalled the governance, but it's going to be all right very soon. We will respawn the chain, and that parameter is going to go back to 0, hopefully. Any questions?
Yeah, can you scroll up? So in the case where you have a committee min size, the percentage is just made up, the total percentage that everybody has is just the total size of the committee at that at the given number, right? It's not related to the min size. So if you have
No.
8, okay, so it's not that if you only have 1 person in the committee and the committee min size is whatever 3, that they get only 33%, they would theoretically get 100%. If they could vote.
Yeah, but they cannot. But
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, with the committee min size of, if the committee min size would be 1, or like you said, if it didn't exist, then they would have the 100%,
Exactly.
and not whatever is there. Gotcha.
Yes, that's correct. Any other questions? No. Okay, let's go to governance action lifetime. So as you may know, there's a countdown, of course, when you submit a governance action. In this example, the value is 3 because I didn't have enough room for higher value. So I made it 3. So 3 epochs. As you submit your governance action, people can vote on it right away. Okay? And the countdown starts on the epoch boundary. So you submit your action. So even if you submit it last minute, the countdown is going to start on the epoch boundary. So if the value is 3, you submit it in the beginning of epoch n. Then on epoch n plus 1, the countdown starts. So 3 Next epoch boundary 2, next one 1, and then it gets expired and it gets removed from the governance state and you get your deposit back. All right? But if your governance action gets ratified, if it is ratified on epoch n+1 here, epoch boundary, then the very next epoch boundary, it gets enacted and you get your money back right away. You do not have to go through all of the governance action lifetime to get your money back from that governance action if it gets ratified. You will get it back on inaction. So there was a question that Van asked me, which was very smart one. What about the community, right? What can they do to counter a governance action that they don't like? For example, if here we're on epoch n, I submitted on epoch n, and there's an epoch that passed, right? And the countdown starts, and over here on epoch n+1, everyone vote yes on that governance action. Everyone vote yes. Does it get ratified right away? The answer is no. You would have to hold that threshold until the epoch boundary. So if for example, a governance action, you cross the on a specific governance action, you cross the constitutional committee threshold and you also cross the DRep thresholds, but the community is against that governance action and they want to move their stake away from the DReps who voted yes, they can. If they don't maintain the threshold that has been crossed until the epoch boundary, the governance action won't get ratified. Is it clear or it was confusing just a little bit?
I guess I have a question. I mean, I think it totally makes sense, but that would mean also from a tooling perspective, right? We have to like kind of do dynamic calculations of the current DRep stake at all times. They're not snapshotted the same way that stake for stake pool operators and their rewards are calculated, right? So if I delegate away from my DRep, because if it were the same way, I think that would be an interesting thing to convey to the community that it's not like with stake pools. Because when I move my stake away from my stake pool, I still get 2 epochs worth of rewards from previous epochs where I had staked with that pool. So I think
yes,
people may assume the same thing is happening with DReps and like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to move away from this stinking DRep because he voted this thing, because they think it doesn't take effect immediately when it in fact does. So that will be an educational opportunity for sure.
Yes. The thing is, that's an interesting thing there. You won't see it right away on the governance state. If for example, I delegated to a DRep that has 2 million total voting power and I hold 1 million voting power that I delegate to that DRep who has 2, right? And the governance action here is going for ratification. It's going to pass. It passed, but I don't like it. So I delegate away from the yes vote and I go to the no side. You won't see it right away, but it will be considered into the calculation at this very epoch boundary. So the ratification won't be done, but you won't see it right away that I moved away from that DRep. You will see it during the calculation.
Well, I think we need to create tooling that lets us see the live state, right? I mean, I have this problem with the tooling that I work with too, is sometimes I need to know what is my current stake, as you know, if the epoch ended now, what would be the distribution versus, and that's a different calculation than the one that is what is actually happening at epoch's end, because you know it's not set until the epoch ends. So it would be hard for us to do governance if if everybody's like, well, are we on yes or no if the epoch would end today? Nobody knows.
You would be able to see it, but it requires DB sync obviously for that. But on the governance state, when you when you query it, for example, with the CLI, if I would query it, I wouldn't be able to see it. But if I use DB sync, you can of course track that.
I
in
got
real
you.
time. Any questions about this particular? No questions? Well, I'm very glad you're here, Nils.
I do have one. I do have an initial question. I know you're talking about enactment. So the period between ratification and enactment, is there a parameter for a governance action that lets me say, actually, I don't want to have this take effect immediately in the epoch after ratification? Is there governance actions where I say, I will want 3 epochs of time between ratification and enactment for whatever reason that there may be?
No, and that's a very good question. Actually, you can change the outcome before its ratification, but when a governance action is ratified, there is no way to stop its enactment.
Gotcha.
Not
The
even.
reason I'm asking, the reason I'm asking is, let's say if there would be such a period, right? If we do something dangerous, we could say, okay, we're going to ratify that. We're going to vote on this. We think, everybody thinks it's working out, okay, but we could give ourselves like a window of, okay, we're going to do 3 epochs for this governance action between ratification and enactment. And then after ratification, obviously that shouldn't happen, but we realize, oh shit, this is going to be really bad. Now, if we had this time, we could say, okay, what we can do is we can do another thing that either nullifies. We can do a vote that only has 1 epoch of time between ratification and enactment, that either nullifies or sets the parameter to what we want it to be, right? If you catch what I'm saying.
Yes.
It makes everything more complicated. Obviously, will be interesting to see what the reasoning was for not making that.
The solution to that, it is not mentioned here, but the Constitutional Committee will have guardrails, smart contract guardrails. So even if they wanted to, they won't be able to vote yes on some parameter change that cross those guardrails. For example, they won't be able to vote a threshold that goes under 51% on some of the threshold that was up there. Because as the Constitutional Committee members, on the Constitution, you could mention that they are forced to use this smart contract to vote. And if they don't, it's unconstitutional. And if it's unconstitutional, if the CC do votes that are unconstitutional, I'm expecting the community to try to throw them out because they do not follow the law, for example. But yeah, actually, there will be guardrails. For example, minimum fees, or actually something that could probably break the chain. I'll go with the block size. You cannot have a 0 block size, right? Because that would obviously break the chain. But can you modify? Can you update on the layer 1? You can update that parameter and try to update it to 0. So if everyone votes yes for that, we break the chain. So how would you stop that? The Constitutional Committee will have guardrails, a smart contract that has guardrails, and they're going to have to use that smart contract to vote as a prerequisite to vote. And they won't be able to vote yes if it crossed that guardrails. So they won't, they will be unforced to vote no on those protocol parameters that goes. Am I making myself clear, actually? It's going to be part of the Constitution.
Gotcha. But it's only applying for the Constitutional Committee for their votes, not for the DReps or the SPOs.
You can't enforce anything on DReps and SPOs.
Yep.
And actually, I mentioned that many, many times in many, many meetings. And it's going to be important, I think, to mention, well, I would love the Constitution to be inclusive. You cannot force, on a technical level, you cannot force a DRep to do something. So I wouldn't put necessarily DReps shall do that or must do this. I mean, try to be inclusive. I would use may, but that's my personal opinion, right? I mean, that's nothing set in stone, right? I'm just providing my opinion as myself. I would use may when I talk about DReps, and I would try to make the constitution more inclusive. Like, they may do this because they're not forced to do it, but they are. I don't know, the constitution that would encourage them to do the right thing, right? Because they are there to defend the chain as well as everyone else, right? So anyway, that's just an opinion. Is there something right now between ratification and enacted to stop it? No, there's not. So if it's something not too critical, but that stall or create problems that can be fixed, then I can imagine that they will try to ratify something to get back to the old parameter value. If they do. If not, then it's going to be a mess, and we're going to get to the Cardano Classic story.
Do you know it? Do you know this may be, I don't want to get too technical, but do you know if ratification and enacting happens, like if there is one epoch boundary and there are two things that need to be done, both ratifying and enacting from different proposals, do you know if the order is ratified first, then enacted? So that if we do in epoch n+2, we do another governance action and immediately say like, or epoch n+1, we realize already we need this, right? So it gets ratified, so that it gets ratified before the chain breaks. These are all like very, very, DAU, worst assumed accident things.
I didn't mention that. That's a good point. When you submit a governance action, you have to, you are required to mention in your governance action the parent governance action that has been enacted previously. So, how would I phrase that? You are forced into your governance action when I submit the governance action, for example, a protocol parameter change. In my governance action, I should mention the governance action ID and the index of the previous governance action ID of the same type that has been enacted before. And the reason is, if on the same epoch N, I submit two protocol parameter change governance action, so that's the same type. It's a governance action protocol parameter change on two different protocol parameter, and it could actually be the same as well. Both of those action has to mention the same previous one that has been enacted. So if both of those go for ratification, so if both of those have their threshold crossed, there's only one that's going to be ratified, and the second one will be invalid, will be orphaned, because the new previous governance action will be the one that has been ratified between these two. So it will make the second one orphan because it didn't mention on it the right previous governance action. I should actually do I think I should do an infographic to explain that. It's very hard to explain. If both of them gets ratified on the same epoch, only one of these two will be ratified. And it's going to be sequential. The one that has been submitted the first will win if both gets ratified. And then the second one will be orphaned because the one that has been ratified is going to be the new previous governance action ID. So in the second governance action where you mention the previous governance action ID, am I making myself clear? It's hard to explain.
Yeah, no, when you pointed out that it was sequential, that was going to be a question that I had, was how is that determined? So that makes total sense.
Oh yeah, I tried to break it this way, this specific way on SanchoNet. I tried every possible way to break it, and that was one of those. I tried to actually my question was the exact same thing. If I do 2 and I ratify them both, so since I hold the entirety of the DReps voting power, I could do that. So I made 2 governance action, and both of them had the same previous governance action ID, and I ratified. I voted yes on both of them as the Constitutional Committee and the DRep. And only the first one I submitted managed to reach ratification. The second one then eventually got expired because it was invalid, because the previous governance action ID that was mentioned in that particular one wasn't right anymore. It wasn't a good one. But
so can you reference unratified ones?
No.
I was just about to ask that.
You won't be able to submit it. You just
because
won't...
that means you can't build like a chain of like, okay, we want to update this parameter, and that one has a lifetime of like 1-2 epochs, whatever, and then we have this other governance action that we want to submit at the same time that is making an assumption that this other thing also applies. You know, that's where it becomes interesting, because then you want to bundle them.
You can.
Which then changes the thresholds.
You can. But you have to expect that, you have to be confident that the first one will be enacted, right? You can do that. It is doable. Like I could make a governance action that reference the previous one, and a second one that reference the one I just submitted. I can do that, but I have to be confident that this one's going to pass. And it's expensive. Expensive deposit. I mean, right? I mean, you want to do that? Of course you can. But will it pass? Right? I mean, I think you might want to wait before, but it's up to you. But it will work, yes. Again, yeah, I think everyone understand that part. And also, I also tried something, since it is sequential. I also tried to submit more than 2 governance action in the same transaction with different index, to be sure that, like, okay, fine, if it's sequential, then what if I do both of these protocol parameter change into the same governance action, and actually the lowest index win in that situation. That's highly technical. Sorry, guys. You don't necessarily need to understand that, I think. The system will kind of fix itself in that situation. I might do an infographic about that too. I'm going to get there eventually. I should take notes, actually. But I'm just going to review that video and make notes of what I should do. Is that okay for this one? Everyone?
Yep.
Yep, good. All right, let's get down to maximum term length. The Constitutional Committee have a term length. So how do we calculate that? Block note. Boom. Okay. So when you submit an update committee governance action, you have to mention the epoch number that your constitutional committee member will be. Well, you have to mention that guy's term for each constitutional committee member that you submit. So there's a protocol parameter for that, which is called committeeMaxTermLength, which is measurable in epochs. So in this example, what you could do when you submit a governance action, you could use the epoch number that you submitted it, plus the governance action lifetime, plus the committee max term length value, and add the result to your cold key hash that you submit. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that the committee max term length value in epoch is not necessarily the maximum amount of time that an elected constitutional committee member can stay in place. You can add the amount of time of the governance action lifetime to that. Because yeah,
Does
because
that mean I can just say like, oh, I'm gonna do 500 epochs for the lifetime of the governance action, and then if I get voted in first epoch, then it's 573 epochs?
yes,
Alrighty.
you could do that.
Let's see who tries that.
You could do that. And why do I mention that? Because exactly what you said, it is important to consider, because if you ever want to change the governance action lifetime protocol parameter, you have to consider that it's going, indirectly, it's going to influence the possible valid value that you can put when you elect a new constitutional committee member. For example, if that is 73, in this example, that's 1 year in epoch. That's the equivalent of 1 year. They won't be kicked out after 1 year. They will still have 3 months left to do politics, right? And vote for me. I want to get back in power, right? So this example explicitly explained that. Any question about this? When they reach their max term length, or the maximum amount of time they're supposed to be in power, then they go away and they have to be re-elected, so they're not in the committee anymore.
Do you know if what the reasoning was to include the governance action lifetime, or was it just because they couldn't make it work like that? It just counts after enactment.
It's because you don't know when exactly it's going to be ratified. So when you submit, a governance action, you have to include the value, right? And they didn't necessarily need to. It could have been just like 73, but the system right now is made this way. Oh yes, because that's why. Because the calculation for that specific governance action is not made in the epoch boundary when it gets ratified. It gets on the submission time. At the time of submission, to make sure that there's not like a shitload of computation about this. I don't know how to explain that correctly. The calculation about that specific governance action on ratification is made at submission.
Yep. I think I get it. I mean, that makes sense for all governance actions, that we want as much off-chain computation. So if a governance action if we can front load all the computation off-chain and just validate it on submission, then we don't have to do stuff at the epoch boundary or whenever to calculate that stuff with all the other things that are going on at the boundary. So I understand the reasoning. Wanted to know if there's like anything, if there's a governance reason for it, or if it's just technically like that makes it easier for us to not have the chain, calculate committee max length for the majority of the epoch boundaries.
Yes, it's mostly technical, because that number could be lower. Here I have 368. It would be valid, and it could be 300. It would still be valid, but it cannot be above that number, or else I wouldn't even be able to submit it. That number is the maximum amount of epochs that I can put in my governance action for it to be valid. Would I be able to submit it if that number is higher? Yes, I would be able to. But if you cross all thresholds for this specific governance action in that particular case, it wouldn't ratify it if that number is too high. All right. dRepActivity. Whoops. Hold on. So here we have a DRep that is already expired. And that's the actual value of, if you go into the DRep state, you can see all the DReps listed, and they all have an expiration. So if, for example, in this example, it's 10, if the dRepActivity value is 10, as soon as I register as a DRep on chain, my expiry is going to be epoch n plus 10. So if I submit a registration on epoch 271, my expiration is going to be 281, like in that case. So in this case, we're on epoch 285. This DRep is already expired. So what does that mean? This DRep doesn't get back his deposit. He is still registered, but he is expired. So his entire stake to him, his entire voting power stake to him goes to abstain, as if it was abstain, because he is inactive. But as soon as this very DRep vote on anything, it pushes forward the expiration to 10. So here we have this already expired DRep. Bob, you might want to mute your microphone, please. Thank you. Here he's already expired, he's inactive, and he votes on epoch 287. So in terms of on-chain, I tried it, and when you do, you get back to active right away. So as soon as you do it, right in the middle of the epoch, your expiry change right away. Doesn't need to wait for epoch boundary, but on the calculation side, it's going to be calculated at the epoch boundary. So what does this mean is that you're inactive here, so you're like an abstain vote, and as soon as you vote here, your expiry gets on this example, expiry change for 297, and your vote could be whatever passive no or anything you voted on gets calculated on this epoch boundary here, and you're then back to active until you reach again the expiry. So every time you vote, the value of the dRepActivity gets, your countdown gets pushed forward every time. Is it okay for everyone? I think the explanation here is clearer than what I provided to you guys. But anyway, you just have to read it. All right, deposit. And that's the last one, and it's pretty simple.
Wait, sorry, I do.
Oh.
Now that I think of it, I have a question. What if there's nothing to vote on?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. And this is the reason why, as the control, the governance control committee, we made that value not too small. If it's too high, you could stall governance in a way that inactive DRep could basically stall governance. But if it's too low, then you have the risk of having a too few active DReps being able to ratify stuff.
Yep. I mean, we can always make an info governance action that's like, hey, roll call.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yes.
So.
But I don't think there's going to be like nothing at all on chain. I believe there's always going to be something to vote on. If not, again, I'm assuming that probably somebody, or actually probably IOG, anyone would probably make an info governance action to make sure that. But that would be extreme, right? If you don't get like anything on chain for like a 4 months or 3 months, because actually the dRepActivity, if it's set to 20, it is 20 epochs, so that means 3 months. So having no governance action at all on chain for
I'm just used to what we currently have, and currently we have no governance actions, and the only thing we do is
right.
trade tokens. So I don't know how busy it's gonna be.
That would be interesting, because I never tried on SanchoNet to update my registration, because you can do that. You can update DRep registration with the same credential, and would that be seen as you trying to reactivate your expiry? I'm gonna have to try this. Actually, I'm very curious. That's a good question. But unlikely to happen, but possible, yes. Right, it is possible, but very unlikely to happen. I know some people because I had that question before. Yeah, what if people just like, you voted there, if you keep doing that, right? And if the DRep activity is 10, for example, then 10 epochs later, you're inactive. So if you don't do nothing until 10 epochs, then everything that gets on chain will consider you as a no vote, passive no vote. This could be seen as something unfair, but I do believe the opposite, because I know somebody who will passively do that.
Mike.
Yes.
Hi, Mike. I have a suggestion. From what I understand, it's just one vote that somebody could take that then extends their time. Maybe it should be like a percentage of participation on the amount of things coming in. Because Nils kind of helped me think about that.
That would require more computation on the ledger side. If you introduce a percentage or any sorts of calculation, because if you do that the way it is, you just reactivate yourself, and that's done. You don't trigger, well, yeah, you do trigger calculation from your own stake, but you don't trigger a calculation in terms of the percentage of things you vote on versus, in terms of activity.
I think that's also one of the reasons why Intersect and Endmaker, through a Catalyst proposal, we're working on making portals or making websites available so that you can see what is your DRep up to, right? So that if you're a community member, you're not a DRep, and my DRep comes out of his hibernation every 10 epochs to vote something on an info action. Maybe that's not the one to represent you, and we want to obviously make sure that there's transparency and visibility into that type of behavior. If that's happening or not, we'll find out.
It is.
But I know there. I know there. No, I'm saying I don't know if it's happening that will actually move people to change their DRep stake. I know it's going to happen that these products are going to be built, because I applied for building one, and I know other people are building them too. But does it move the needle, right? The same way we thought, hey, when we do certain things, it will move stake to other operators, and oftentimes that doesn't happen because stake is also sticky.
The tool is ready already, and they didn't release it. I saw it. It's really cool, because actually, every time you vote, whatever entity you are, every time you vote, you can provide a rationale, an anchor URL with the rationale of your reasoning. Why do you vote yes? Why do you vote no? Same thing for the governance action, and the same thing as well for your registration. And we as a community are preparing standards for that you do respect or not. It's up to you, right? But actually, there could be something in the Constitution that would require you to provide a standardized rationale for your vote. So you won't be able to provide a rationale, but if you do, you have to follow a standard, like a JSON standard file with fields. But I'm not 100% sure about that. Actually, they're working on it as we speak. So we might have examples of that very soon. But this will be on chain, right? Every time a CC vote or a DRep vote on a governance action, they can provide a rationale, and this will be seen by those tools. Because I saw it. It's really cool, actually. But you guys are going to see it very soon. The deposit. We already have deposit for the stake address, our stake credentials, right? And the reason why we have a deposit for that is to make sure that nobody does Sybil attack on chain, right? We need a deposit because we don't want people to register countless numbers of credentials and spam the chain with that. So we will need deposit for DReps and for governance actions. For DReps, that's obviously the DReps credential deposit. So that would be against Sybil attack. But the governance action deposit would be against the flood of the governance state, which we did on SanchoNet. Actually, you don't want to have to review 8,000 governance action in the same epoch. That would be like nearly impossible to do. So you do want the deposit for that, to make sure that there's a good flow of governance action, but not too much. So that's what it describes in there. Have any question about that? These are updatable. So this means, yeah, that's one of the questions that I had. If the dRepDeposit is 2 ADA, and I do my deposit, I register as a DRep. And then after, we make a governance action and we change that deposit to 10,000. What happens to my 2 ADA? And the answer is you do have this information into your stake address info. So you can see how much ADA you deposit for your registration, and if it is lower than the actual parameter, you do have an acquired right, which means that if when you did your registration the amount of the deposit was 2 ADA and afterwards it gets up to 10,000, that's good for you. It only costs you 2 ADA. You do not have to provide 10,000 if it has been done after. But on the opposite side, if it was 10,000 and they lowered it to 2, I would suggest that you update your registration to get that money back, since now it is lower. Governance action deposit, if that change, let's say you submit the governance action and it was 1,000 at that time, and then they raise it to 10,000. This will not invalidate your governance action. It will only require you to provide 10,000 on the next one that you're going to submit after the enactment of that parameter. Same thing goes for the opposite. And on the expiry of that governance action, you will get the very same amount that you deposited, whatever that parameter is. So if you had to deposit 1,000 at the time of your submission, when it expires, you get 1,000, even if we change that parameter. That's it. So that was all the governance protocol parameter. There's not much more to say.
So I have a quick question. So as we go through this, let's say a DRep, and you come across any of these challenges where parameter changes and you're required to have an action, what does that experience look like for the DRep when they go to the governance tools and they're looking at it? Is there a warning sign that says, "Hey, such and such parameters changed"? Let's say it's in regard to your deposit. Is there things, pop-ups, whatever, notifying you that you have something you might need to look at to take care of?
No. At the moment, no. If you work from the CLI, you will see it because it's a list. So my voting script allow you to see that as well if you vote from the CLI. Actually, I'm supposed to change it too. As it is right now, no. No.
Can you repeat the question? I missed the question because I was looking at something else.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more or less as these things go across. We covered a lot here, right? And as a DRep, if you're going through this process, sometimes it's helpful to have a reminder that, let's say, we were just talking about the deposits. Let's say it increased. Is there anything that makes it? You'd hope that all DReps would be aware, but sometimes you get busy or whatever. Things can change on chain. So what notifies you that these things are changing that you may need to be aware of or that you might need to take action on? Right?
Gotcha. It's funny that you mention it, because one of the things, a Catalyst proposal I'm working on right now, is exactly designed to do things like that, where you can connect your wallet and it will know. You can submit your right now it's only wallet based, but it will also allow SPOs to submit their credentials and verify, and DReps to verify And then you can essentially, down the line, as this tool gets built out, subscribe to anything. If you want to be notified via text message when a new proposal comes in a specific category, for example, you can set that up. If you want to be notified that a parameter on chain changes, even as somebody who isn't a DRep, right, it might be interesting. Maybe you are considering becoming a DRep, but you can't afford the deposit and you don't want to ask somebody else, and then you want to be notified if that ever changes. So all those types of things, you want to be notified, and you don't want to be notified by going to a Twitter account or whatever. So
Right.
that is something that I know I'm personally working on because it is near and dear to my heart from the governance perspective as well as SPOs, but also as a holder of tokens. I want to know what's going on. So I know I'm working on that. I don't know if Mike knows if something is going on the intersect side, but that is certainly something that I am hoping to build.
On the Gov tool itself, no. I didn't hear about some sort of notification, but that being said, an epoch is 5 days. So you can expect the DReps, I would hope the DReps to be able to at least once every 5 days to take a look at what's going on chain. I don't think that's too much demanding, specifically for DReps, because right, I mean they are accountable for the people that delegates to them. So as a DRep, checking once every 5 days and vote on governance action would be fine with me. But in terms of notifications, no, there's nothing right now. You could script something for yourself if you wanted to from the CLI, and the tools that are provided on the SanchoGov.tools website. Right now, there's no notifications. And the wallets I've used for the testnet as well, they don't have that, but you could suggest that as well. That's a great suggestion because they do take reviews from the community. I suggested to Ryan, just like I think it was yesterday, I suggested to him it would be nice if what was it? No, you could see. Oh yes, because they're going to implement the capabilities of submitting governance action on GovTool, because right now on SanchoGov.tools you can only register as a DRep and vote on governance action. You cannot submit a governance action. But what's coming, like very soon, you will be able to submit governance actions, but you won't be able to see the governance action that you submitted. So my suggestion was like, just as for when you vote on something, can you add a little tab that shows the governance action that you submitted yourself with your credentials? So if you have any suggestions like that, I would suggest that you contact Ryan to have his handle. Actually, he's on my Discord. Hold on, Ryan. I'll just here, and I will tag you as well. About SanchoGov.tools. Yeah, so if you look on the SanchoNet channel of this Discord is everything you want to know. You have questions, you want to talk about topics. There's no basic rules. You can spam stuff, you can do anything you want as long as it's governance related. That's my rule. So
awesome.
We do all sorts of things, right? You can post gifts or stuff that you like, but it has to be, the only rule I'm putting on that channel is that it has to be governance related. So yeah, okay, that's there. Anything else, guys?
No, thank you.
Was it clear enough? I'm actually routing the thing in case I have presentations to do and during some conventions or anything. I'm gonna use slides, of course. I'm not gonna use the old map like this. But
yeah, it was very clear. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'll stop it right there, and I'll wish you a great evening.